Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Work Cookie, a collection of IOs, HRs, and an absent actor this week. We are winding down the year. This will be the last recording before 2026, and continuing on with the theme this month, kind of career clarity. What is it? How do you get it? Why do you need it? But really, in a time where so many people are setting goals for next year, and on so many of those sheets, I'm sure, is find a first job, find a new job, find that IO specific role. And I don't know if you watch the news or anything of late, but the job market, at least in the US, is, we'll say, bumpy to be polite. And so it is a strenuous process that leaves so many vulnerabilities out for a job seeker, for a recent grad, questioning why did I even pay for this degree? Is the credential worth it? And I would like to say yes, but this is also a topic that is near and dear to me, as I am one of those people who is actively looking for that first IO role, and the process that it takes to really find that. And so, working off of Dr. Morton's notes, she put together some things kind of how do you go from this nebulous, I need a job? That's a great statement. It's a great starting point, but it's not a clear definition. There is a lot that needs to happen, and it's not always easy. Again, insecurity, fear, all of that sort of stuff comes creeping in from the wings very much when there's this vulnerable sort of I'm out of work, I'm not in line with the schooling that I've done or anything like that that's been known to happen. So finding direction in any part of life is not easy. Career with the financial implications, even more so. So we'll kind of talk over a few things. There are three areas that you really kind of need to know as you equip yourself to go out to what is a dogfight right now in the job market. But really, it's best to know who you are, know what the market is doing. There's scary numbers out there, but there are ways to figure out what those numbers actually mean, and then know the path. It's not going to happen overnight. And how do you get where you truly want to be? What steps do you need to take, and all that? So, starting with know thyself. It's self discovery. It's squishy. It's feel good from sometimes, but there are tools out there to really kind of hold up a mirror. And 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get anything new. Um, you're just going to confirm what you already know about yourself. Um, there is the Rysick model that Dr. Morton is very, very fond of. And we've mentioned it several times throughout the month, but it does kind of tune you into what areas of work might be the ones that really charge you up. Um, I'll put some of these notes in the chat as we get the conversation going. But there's a value and action assessment, and that's kind of, what is your character? Who are you? How do you want to show up? And then, really being honest and saying, okay, I have this degree. I've been exposed to, statistical analysis, experimental design, all these things, but what don't I know? I know that the Career Accelerator course offered through CBOC, which we will probably mention and plug at several points in the conversation, walks through all of this process as well. But it really is, again, kind of a coach in a box to get you to hold up that mirror and stop and think about, what are your next steps? It's all too easy to go, I need a job, tense up and panic, and just jump at the first thing that comes to you. But when it comes to a career and thinking about the next 20, 40, however long your working life is going to be, it is good to stop and take stock and take assessment at any point in your career. So we'll get those assessments and things like that up. And so again, kind of sitting with, where have I been? What do I enjoy? What do I want to do? And how do I want to show up with that? Again, it's journaling, it's self-reflection, it's the hard work. That really there's no certificate for it or anything like that. Tools as far as the market goes. We talk all the time in the field of IO or IO psychology that there are so many niches. It's everything the light touches as far as the workplace goes. So really knowing what niche you're in, where your strengths are, That can look like I want to do selection and assessment. I want to do training and development. I want to be a coach, do strategy. There are so many areas you can do. The problem is you can't do them all at once. So kind of narrowing the focus, and if you look at the whole picture all the time, you're going to get overwhelmed and overburdened. And so finding where do you match the market as far as what's available, what you can do, and what you enjoy. And ONET is a wonderful resource as far as what's expected in different roles. It's kind of that encyclopedia of work. I don't remember the last time it was completely reworked, but I know there's always kind of additions and things like that. Not quite like Wikipedia, but I know there's always people kind of going through as new jobs get added there as well. And then, we always say the IO words may not be in the title, but you are going to see those transferable skills that come from what you've learned, what you've done already, and then you'll be able to say, oh, well, they call it X, and I know it is Y. So know those transferable skills and be able to bring all of your experience to the next role. The next part is, the concrete stuff. This is where you should be writing it down, putting it up on a whiteboard, seeing it every day so you know where you're going when the chaos takes over, when there's so much silence from job boards, when there's, nothing happening, you can go back and say, this is the plan. I'm sticking to the plan. Goal setting, again, we are in that resolution series. And so goals are often misunderstood. They want to be big, they want to be achievable. And typically we talk about SMART goals. So specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. You could also add, evaluation and revision. It's a smarter goal because it doesn't happen overnight, and it's a point on the horizon that you're aiming towards, and you always need to stop every once in a while, take stock of how far you've come so far, and make sure that you're still, on that right guiding star there as well. And yeah, so there's all of that to say. There's a ton going on. CBOC has some fantastic resources available for some of these things. I can speak to them. I've gotten to help pilot and critique some of these things. But the Pathfinder membership is fantastic. The expanded Pathfinder, you get one call a month with one of the senior consultant types, and it's a discussion, 45 minutes to an hour, all about you. These are people who care about the field, they care about your success, and they will do what they can to impart their knowledge to what you have. So those sessions are absolutely worth the price of admission. And if you're not using those in a Pathfinder membership, I would strongly, strongly encourage you to do so. And then there is the Career Accelerator course, which has been in development for about a year and is live. There's the full course where you get a cohort and some online resources. And then there is also a simple workbook that you can kind of work through. It takes some of those reflective exercises and really gives you a framework to sit down so you're not just, sitting down like the philosopher going, I think, therefore I am. You really do have a framework to start working through and asking the right questions about who you are, what you want to do, and what impact you can make in the workplace as well. So that's the general overview. We'll open up to more broad questions. Feel free to raise your hand. We'll try to get to everybody as we talk about some of the questions and concerns and other good tips on this. I often say career advice is much like dating advice. It's all very well intentioned, but you have to stop and find out what works for you. The morning routine videos and all these really well intentioned good advice may not work for you due to the reality and practicality of your situation. So we do want to be aware of that. But with that being said, Dr. Tim, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And there's a great introduction because I'm sitting here nodding my head. Yes, because for the introduction to the book, we actually talked about, I think, in maybe as early as last week, if not weeks before, about what color is your parachute? That book that is updated every single year. And there have been so many times in my life when you mentioned about taking some self-surveys and assessments to find out what you're passionate about and what jobs those may relate to. So it's not always about finding what's easily available. You need to find something that, or in a perfect world, that also aligns with your values. So we want to get another plug to that book because again, it's updated annually, called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" So for the students out there, especially, there are a lot of surveys in there. It really gets you to think and do exercises about, as Nick, as you mentioned, what's important to me in the job place. It's not just a job. It's to do more than pay the bills. It should also be very fulfilling. So as I was thinking about, as you're thinking, mentioning that, and I was referencing what color is your parachute, I was thinking about the self-determination theory. And so many times when people feel stuck in careers or they're searching for a career and you're looking for that alignment with your value system and maybe not the job title, which is a part we covered as IO psychologists, that we're not always going to find a role that says, hey, we're looking for an IO psychologist. Even though we touch everything, the job title may not say that. So be open, keep your perspectives wide, and then bring it in, but make sure your behaviors and your values and the role that you have, and it will help not just be a job, but it'll give you possibly a career path or a company culture that embodies your spirit or you have an alignment with.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there's so much of, the first question you ask in a mixer is, well, what do you do for work? And that gets so tied up in identity. And I know from your background, you are, kind of a late career switch to give back to the industry that you're in, as far as policing goes. How much of that identity piece do you think plays in, if we don't reflect on it, how much can you, be 10 years down the road and not quite sure where you are? So how much does the culture or identifiers of a role or an industry feed into, kind of inertia and what happens when you stop and really think about what that means for your career rather than just a job?
I think it's a great question because part of it is people will say that they feel burnt out. And that's why I talk about values or the role. So for my example, 32 years, I'm second generation police officer. And it wasn't always the job role. I love the role, but it was sometimes the culture. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was not the breadwinner in our household. And I've had to change agencies as a result because my better half was promoted. And the first time I left an agency was because they got promoted out of state. So I got to start all over again with a freshly minted master's degree at that time. So, but this IO psychology degree was very intentional because the culture I was in at the time, I'd already had the master's degree, and I was working with Dr. Gary Namey and read his book about bullying in the workplace. And that unknowingly led me down to the very start of my path down IO psychology, and it's paved the way for the rest of my career. So I knew, taking again it's one class per quarter nonstop for 7 years, that the ultimate goal is when I did retire, which I did from law enforcement, it was just to go back into the workplace as an IO psychologist, but with all those years of experience, plus being reared in that culture to help make it better for the next generation, playing Simon Sinek's infinite game. As far as this profession, law enforcement, public safety is going to be around long after all of us here have left the earth, whatever that looks like for you. But that profession will continue to go on and on and on. So that's what keeps me going, keeps me engaged in trying to fix the culture or find the ones that are getting it right, and in celebrating those with other people that are willing to listen.
Yeah, it's well said and well done, from everything I've seen you be able to do in the short time that I've known you. And I think that is one thing that can cause that imposter syndrome, that pause, that am I good enough? We don't always have the crosswalk to say, well, I did this over here and it looks like that over there. And so thank you for chiming up and, speaking to a success story, because I think far too often, if you're, doing what, popular advice is and you're on LinkedIn all the time, you see this negative vortex of the job market's broke, recruiting's broke. I'm never going to find a job I love. I'm desperate and all this. there are success stories out there. And I think that part of it is balance. If you can find some of those optimistic stories, some of those positives, that can help kind of refuel and stave off the burnout and all that. RG is a question. How do you find the ones who are getting it right? LinkedIn is a black hole. That's really the trick, because I think that I have found in applying for roles and jobs and careers and whatever you want to call it, there's a wild imbalance, and it's not fair, and it was never meant to be fair. But the people who have the jobs get to dictate the rules. The people who want the jobs, you can either play by those rules or you can take your ball and go home. And it's hard to feel like you have control, but you do have a choice as to whether to apply for the organization that you hear has a terrible, uh, surveillance style management that you won't thrive in, because you do have all those, I've got to feed the kids and all of that as well. So I think to find those cultures that are getting it right, you do have to take a deep dive. You may not have to go out and be the fanboy or fangirl that they want you to be, because they always ask the question, why our organization? And the sarcastic part of my brain always goes, because you have a job open that I can do. And we have made hiring far more complicated than that. And I probably could even push back on myself and say, well, why do you think you can do that job? Because that's the story you need to tell. It's one thing to know it, but you have to show it, demonstrate it, and you have to talk to people like they're 3 years old. So how do you find the ones who are getting it right? You shake the trees, you push on the network, you find people who work there, who have left, you look at what they're doing in the community, business reports as far as profitability, all that sort of thing. There's no one size magic bullet. They don't come out and say we're a terrible culture. Nobody ever does. And you watch the way people speak about them in the comments, and really just kind of their marketing and customer service. For organizations out there hiring, I would say this to you: be careful with your candidate experience, because that is part of your marketing as well. I will get off my soapbox. I know Rich has a lot of thoughts and opinions on this topic as well, so we'll go over to you, Rich.
Yeah. So RG, I'm glad that you asked that question, because yeah, okay. So LinkedIn can be a black hole, but having conversations with people, we hear networking, right, a lot, and a lot of the times it's like collecting Pokemon cards or Magic cards or whatever your collection is, right? We're just collecting people and then not following up with them. But whether you're using, a lot of schools have Handshake, or there's an alumni network. There are people, particularly on those alumni networks, that have that post themselves as mentors, or they're open to connecting to talk about their work experience and stuff like that. I think that's a good place to start for people who are getting it right. That said, you can always learn from people who got it wrong too. Honestly, I've personally started and lost a business in the middle of that recession that we had. So there's lessons to be learned across the board. In the notes here, I put that I did an exercise earlier this year on trying to narrow down and get to my ikigai, right, which is the reason for being, as a Japanese word for reason for being, and or that's what I've come to understand it to mean, right? And really, it's kind of think of it as a Venn diagram of what am I good at, what do I love, what does the world need, and what can I get paid for? And the intersection of all of that, develops something that you can zone in on, right? And then you can use some artificial intelligence to help you with that. Like I've taken so many assessment, folks, it's crazy. The Colby, the Strengths Finder, the my High Five, Ocean. There's just so many different ones that I've taken, and I threw that into into the system as well as my work experience and all that, and then said, well, knowing that, what are the career trends that are out there, right? And threw that into the system. And the one nice part of, not one nice, there's some nice parts about using artificial intelligence. It's pretty good at picking up patterns, right? So pulling all that together, it helped me to figure out what those roles could possibly be. So it gave me a list of those. And then going into LinkedIn, again, Handshake or any of those other places, and finding people who have those titles gave me a reason to approach them and say, hey, look, we went to the same school, boiler up, or, hey, we both went to the place where fun goes to die, Chicago, right? So I get, and people generally are pretty open to, talking about their experiences, albeit sometimes more briefly than others, but I think it does have to do with connecting with people on that level. The other thing is a lot of the associations that are out there have student memberships, or you can go to a free event, or you can go ask somebody, can I come as a guest? Those types of things. Those are really helpful, because then you can go in and build that network and then do your follow-ups afterwards. So just a couple of things that I'd recommend.
Rich, excellent points. Something you said kind of stands out to me, because I think there is a potential trap. We talk about know yourself, and self-knowledge is critical. But do you think that there's a point where you've taken too many assessments and it becomes kind of like just firing resumes off into the void? It feels good because it's something to do. It's something you can show your work at the end of the day and say, look, I did a thing. At what point do you have to carry that knowledge out into the world and do something with it?
That's a great question, Nick. And here's the thing. I think actually all those assessments actually helped to bring me to IO psychology, not just because I went through career counseling. 2019, I said, I was in marketing for most of my career. I said, 2019, what can I do that's outside of marketing, or is marketing my thing? Like, I don't know, so I needed to get some outside perspective. So I went through a licensed career counselor to help me through the process. And of course I went through a battery of assessments there. Right. But I found all of those fascinating, the structure of them, the degrees of reliability and validity for them. There are some that just flat out are not things that you want to really use for your career direction, nor of course for making selection. So we've talked about that before. You can go back into some other episodes. That could be some heated discussion there, but do I think that there's a point where there's too many? Yeah, absolutely. I've probably reached that threshold maybe 5 or 6 assessments ago. But
right. It's go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, what were we going to say, Nick? I'm sorry. Just
no. I think that there is that danger of staying too long in the discovery and the development phase and not getting to, these are the goals and now I've got to go chase them.
Yeah. But from a business standpoint, right? I totally agree. Do not get into analysis paralysis, right? Like, oh, I'm going to stay here until I absolutely know what I want to do. You have to take action given what you know, right? And that's, in business, I teach, in business courses, if you think of a one-page business plan, there is the one-page business plan formula that's out there. And I think it's overly simplistic, but it's helpful to visualize that you start with a vision. That's the first thing. Like, where do I want to go? And that vision largely stems from analysis. The one-page business plan does not talk about analysis, but that is, that's the element that allows you to have a vision. The vision begets mission, What am I going to do to achieve that vision? Vision is the thing I'm aspiring to. Then your goals, your objectives, that comes into play. And the goals determine the work breakdown structure, right, of the work that needs to be done from a strategic level, and then from your strategies are the tactics, the tactical elements that fall from that. If you treat your job, your career as mapping that out, it's very similar, right? Like I have to understand who who I am, but gathering more data along the way from either other assessments or from gathering information from other people that you network with or whatever, right? That just helps to feed the analytical part, because you need to have a feedback loop through the entire system, right? It's all systems thinking when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and I mean that to put it as a one-page business plan, I think is fantastic, and I think a lot of this, know yourself, research, know the market, know what your goals are. That's all work that's internal and not necessarily going to have a ton to show for it unless it creates that sense of calm, clarity, and purpose, which is kind of the point of doing the work there as well. Dr. Kim, to you.
Oh, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are. So a lot of great conversation happening, and I've been taking notes and jotting things down. One of the things that I have found, and I tell my students a lot, I've got a lot of them that are getting ready to head out with their bachelor's degree, and they are scared, absolutely scared of the job market right now. As IO students who are getting ready to step out there, they're looking at LinkedIn, specifically looking at that black hole. They don't know what to hit first, and how do you know what company is the right one? RG asked a really good question. How do you know which ones are getting it right? They're going to interview you, but you should be doing your due diligence and interviewing the company. You should be checking on the comments. Like Nic said, check the comments. Don't be afraid to message people that work there and ask them, what's the culture? Ask them what it's really like. People will tell you what it's really like. Get into the nitty gritty and find out, do they have a DEI statement? What's their about page say? Do their values match what your values are? And, things along that line. And if it isn't a company that's looking like it should for you, then move on. Don't even waste your time trying to get an interview. There are bigger ones and better ones out there. Something that I had to ask myself when I first started in the field, I had to look outside of it. Wasn't going to be here, and I live in Michigan. It wasn't going to happen right here in my itty bitty little town. I had to move. I had to actually take some time away from my family, took 6 months, went and took a job in Baltimore to be able to get the expertise on my resume to be able to say, I'm getting some work in the field as an IO practitioner. So are you willing to make that jump for a little bit if that's what it's going to take? It might be, wow, that's extreme, but are you willing to take a little bit of effort to, get it on your resume, get some effort built? I love, that we talk networking all the time. I do love it, and it does help. Get involved in things like this, the podcasts, the pop-up community, go to the events, go to the conferences. Those are always going to help. But the one thing you want to sell yourself. I tell my students this all the time. When you leave your degree program, you are walking out with the same piece of paper as the next person. So what's going to make it different? What's going to make you able to get that job when somebody else is applying for the same job? It's your soft skills. It's your able to delegate. It's your able to make job, decisions on the spot, your decision making, your problem solving, your oral and written communication, your open-mindedness. Sell all of that. If you can get an interview, have that personality and push all that. And even if you can't, do the cover letters. Those still get read, even though they're like, no, don't need them anymore. They still get read. Push all of that. And I think that that's going to go a long way. So yeah, it's challenging. It's always challenging. But you got to just market yourself and get yourself out there, but interview the company. They're looking for you, but you're looking for them just as well.
Very true. They talk about, I forget who said it, but you're hiring the role as much to, fill that space of I need income, as much as they're hiring you for specific skills as well. From the student perspective, Dr. Kim, you said something that jumped out at me. People are scared, and it is scary. But the best time to plant a tree was 1,000 years ago. The next best time is today. So get into the career center. Get into these networking places. Make yourself visible. Yes, you can sit there and have a moment, feel bad that you didn't do it earlier, shake it off, and go do it now. I think that's part of this whole process. I can tell you I block count of the cycle that I've seen and the cycle that I've participated in as searching out a career. Well, all the advice is well-meaning. I don't need it. I don't need it. I'll do it myself. And then the frustration mounts, the burnout happens. You stop, you scream, you rage. It's not fair. And then you really do have to take that beat and go through the process. I made the joke about dating advice earlier. It's very similar. It's an important decision to make. Where you work is a big deal. You spend 8 hours or more a day there. It sets up your income and all of that. And so there's these massive implications of the decision. Well, at the same time, there's not just one role out there for you. There's the role that you can make yourself compatible with, the organization that you find yourself aligning with, and all of that. So again, you do have agency, you do have choice, and it's hard because we make up stories when there's the absence of facts. Like you hear silence on a job application, and you go, "Oh, they didn't like me," and that sends you down this whole different rabbit hole. When in reality, they could have gone with an internal candidate. The job could have closed. There are so many assumptions that we make as we're out there taking these chances that might just be flat out wrong. You look at some of the tools that are out there as far as, okay, I know that I want to work in aerospace. And thankfully, in my area, there's several companies that are out there. Thanks, buddy. Sorry, the sidekick is trying to contribute a little bit this week. But we talk about everybody knows exactly which ATS they're putting their information into based on the landing page. I know Workday is going to read my resume like this. I know Ashby is going to ask me these questions, and we can get mad at those companies because they designed the software, but are the people using it in the way that it was intended? And so really being curious, asking those questions, and again, it is putting in the wrench time and going through the process. I hate to sound cliche, but really taking those steps because it is important. You have to balance this is my life with I can change it in 2 to 3 years if I have to. I can change it in 6 months if I have to. You're not, setting it in stone. You're setting an intention. And with that, back over to you, Tim.
All good points, and Dr. Kim as well, and Rich as well. It's funny as I'm hearing, of course, I see it through my lens, which is, I'm a researcher for emotional intelligence. Believe you me, I don't always show it, but I can be aware of it. And it comes with practice, even at, my age. Always a, forever learner and learning from the mistakes. I think, Rich, you called that out. Sometimes we learn best from our mistakes. But I'd like to take the opportunity to talk about the theory of emotional intelligence as a multiplier for what you're doing out there. Looking in the workforce or trying to decide, am I in the right career? Because when you have that anxiety, it really narrows your field of vision. Nick earlier mentioned about, I think, imposter syndrome, or maybe misappropriating that. At one point, we were talking about that, as you're going through, I'm not fit for this job, and preparation will help to take care of that. But again, emotional intelligence, and social intelligence underscore how important those are. Not just outward facing, but also inward facing. And I was in a workshop last week, and I now have the emotions wheel up in front of me, and that whole thing of name it to tame it or name it to claim it. And so they did an exercise, and it was, the example is if a coworker took credit for work you did, how would that make you feel? And then you have like angry, And then it boils down from there to other words to help describe that anger. That way you can name it, to tame it, or claim it, whatever your flavor is. But that's something I literally have up here on my board, because as I'm going through this, and again, I'm, being a consultant, I'm always perpetually selling myself as well. And they're not always positive interactions. And I kind of do a self debrief, again, that emotional self regulation. And that wheel, having that right in front of me, has really helped to very quickly get to the root cause and not just let it get stuck in between here in an echo chamber, and get it out of there and move on to the next. So, because we're going to receive a lot of no's, even in the workplace. So I believe emotional intelligence and self-regulation are key to just being a better person, but also better at work and with everyone, all of our interactions. Yeah, and there are self-assessments out there for that as well.
I think it's a great point as well. When you have the resources, it's easy to read a book and forget about it, or do a class and put it on the shelf. To have a visual reminder that this is something I'm working on. Again, a vision board sounds cheesy, but if you have your goals in front of you on a regular basis, it'll tune your mind to it. And again, when there's so many no's and there's so much going wrong, you can kind of lock back in and go, hey, when I was in a good place, this is where I said I wanted to go. I still want to get there. With that, over to you, Rich.
Yeah, something came to mind as you were talking about that, Dr. Tim. And I think Dr. Heather would probably like this because it's talking about ONET. So, if we consider competency models and your emotional intelligence is one of those things that actually shows up now, to some extent. Empathy and the like show up in some of the ONET profiles. Like I'm looking here at training and development managers as an example, right? That you can actually see some of the specific tasks and technology skills that are required when you're trying to figure out who you want to talk to, where you want to go, and all that stuff. But outside of those, the skills that you need and those types of things, the work break or the work analysis, job analysis components of that, from a worker characteristic standpoint, the abilities and interests and work styles, some of those that come from those assessments, such as Holland's codes and stuff like that, are pretty interesting to take a look at. And you can judge, hey, am I really, from this standpoint, am I really, enterprising and social? I would say yes. But what other things could I be? How do I put this? What other things could I be working on and developing? To get me into this area that I want to be in. So, I think if we use some of our IO knowledge and skills and do actually do the job analysis of what we want to be doing, I think that can go a long way to take us from I don't know where I'm at and I don't know what to do right now to exactly how do I tailor my, not just my resume and my LinkedIn profile, but my entire strategy. And then just to put a finer point on something I said earlier, then you can actually use some of the artificial intelligence from ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, right? When you have that stuff, you can actually engineer a pretty decent prompt that will help you to say, okay, I should update my LinkedIn profile to do this. I should create this content to do that. I should raise my hand during the Work Cookie podcast and say something that I can put on my LinkedIn profile because I'm going to get tagged, and recognized as somebody that knows what they're talking about. And you don't have to know what you're talking about. Look at me, I'm right here. So, anyway, but really, I mean, some of that stuff will come out using some of that pattern recognition that artificial intelligence does, and I've used it for the last few years with some success, and getting interviews and getting potential proposals for contracts and stuff like that as a consultant. So.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. We are here Thursdays, noon Eastern. Feel free to come in, contribute to the conversation. We're always happy to have new voices, more chairs at the table. Helps us get to clearer answers. There was something you said, Rich, and it jumped out at me, and it had a thought, and then I figured I'd have to have a plug for everybody being here in the room. I think one thing, especially fresh out of school, where the curriculum and the coursework is lined out for you. You don't have to have permission for a lot of things. You don't have to have permission to come here and speak up. You don't have to have permission to start a podcast of your own, to go to your local library and find as much information on a particular field. You have more capability and possibility at your fingertips than you realize. It's not always easy to see. I feel it. I felt it a long time. But there are people out there. There are opportunities out there. And in reality, part of the reason to go through the process and set a clear goal for 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, you don't want to have to do this again. I mean, you don't want to get into a role, go, this isn't for me, I can't handle it. And, the damage that can cause by not being engaged in your work, and the drag, the ripples of that are just as bad, if not worse, than sitting here wallowing in a place where you have possibility. My problem is I'll read a job description and I'll go, well, I can totally do that. Well, just because you can doesn't mean that you will or should. Can I do it? Absolutely. Would I want to do data analysis 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? No, I would hurt somebody if I had to just stare at a screen instead of talking to people. So again, knowing who you are, how you interact, how you work, it's a foundational step in the whole process, because it just is. I mean, I don't know if I can beat the point home any harder. But we're sitting, talking about this, and we have talked about this topic every which way, several points throughout the year. So it's not a one and done. It's not, okay, I'm going to take 30 minutes in my journal, I'm going to have the world figured out. No, it's a process. It'll take that adaptation, revision, flexibility, because, everybody's got a good plan until they get punched in the mouth. And you're going to take some of those slings and arrows out in the job market for sure. But if you know that, it can help kind of defense for it. And, you may be one of the fortunate ones. I think there's, we look at so much comparison through social media, through LinkedIn, all the other sites as well, and right now my algorithm has me commiserating with a lot of frustrated job seekers. And I want to kind of knock it a degree or two off and go, show me the success stories. Show me people who are winning. And those are the people that you need to be talking to, because they found something that works for them. Again, take all advice with a grain of salt and apply it to your situation and your capabilities. And be curious about how they got there. Again, I talked about not needing permission. You don't need permission to reach out to somebody who's in a role that you want to have. That's really good networking, because yes, you don't want to lead with, I desperately need a job. Start with that. Hey, how did you get where you're at? People love to talk about themselves. So there will be some trickle downs there, and you have to make room for some of that serendipity, because as much as you talk about a plan and knowledge and skills and capabilities, there is an element of life that boils down to just plain dumb luck. And, some people aren't qualified and they stumble into it because their dad runs the company. Other people just happen to, I keep waiting for my serendipitous moment where, the head of human resources is going to sit down at one of my tables at work and be like, oh, we're looking for this. I'm like, well, that's me. And it hasn't happened yet. But you think about romantic comedies and some of those plot holes. those things are happening, and they're definitely worthwhile. Dr. Tim, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I'd like to call out Rich for that about networking. And one of the pieces of advice that I was given is like, you need to be networking all the time. But I found the easy way to do a habit, but I put this podcast weekly on my schedule, and it takes priority because I feel I am better for it at the end of the podcast, and it re-energizes my day. And so the other things are in between. So being here, but I had to be very intentional. That's how I work. It's on my calendar. So that's how it sets up the habit, and that's how I tend to be here on a weekly basis. I enjoy the live recorded session because you get to see the questions live or get to interact, because the chances of going back to listen to it are diminished greatly as there's distance, time and distance. So that's why I like being here every Thursday. It's also part of networking. I'm a solopreneur. I work in my office here. I have my 2 coworkers with 4 legs behind me. And this is my outlet to have some FaceTime with people live. And I know our podcast is global. And when I hosted it last year for the month of September, looking at some of the numbers and where some of the people and some of the feedback from that has been amazing. So again, a lot of us were also, I was an online student. I'm sure some of the other folks out there are as well. It was a great way of still having that FaceTime. Again, to Rich's point, network is important, and they're finding that the LinkedIn model is kind of passé. We are now going into, yet again, people are hardwired for connection. That being in person is best. So if you can't do that, since we're global, being here on video is by far creates more of that connection. So just want to give you that shout out to both Rich and for you to talk about this is learning, bettering ourselves, but also always networking because you're not sure when you're going to be out of a job. Absolutely. Or you can help someone come into your culture that can be a good part of your team.
Absolutely. Again, it's making room for that serendipity. And yes, I think we are seeing more and more research that in person is best. But I will attest to there's my idea of generating friendship or being able to connect with people kind of comes down to proximity, consistency, and intention. Are you in a space where you can run into these people? Are you there on a regular basis? You should be able to connect to your neighbor because you're walking down the street all the time. But then, being curious, intention, asking those questions, saying hi. We can get, pop in our earbuds, look at our phone on the whole commute on the train. That works. It can be good. We can call it self-care. We can be listening to an audiobook and improving ourselves. But every once in a while, we do need to stop and go, there are people here. I should acknowledge that. And so I think it's not an easy thing to do, but with practice and with intention, putting it on your calendar, putting a goal that I'm gonna say thank you to the barista. Even as simple as that, those small steps can drastically do all of that. To swing back to the marketing, and you're always marketing yourself. That makes my skin crawl because I'm a person, not a commodity. But it does have to be done. I've fought that fight in my head 1,000 times. But you are marketing yourself. You are selling yourself. And I always frame it as, what is the story that I'm trying to tell? I take a more narrative approach to it. And in that, we have to remember, you can do it because you know the skill, or you can do it because you genuinely want to. And people see through, tips and tricks and all of that. But being genuine, it's one thing to, I'm going to say thank you to the barista. That's just good manners. But if you're doing it because you're checking off the little box, that's not as great as, I want to be genuinely more appreciative of people in my surroundings. Back to you, Tim.
Yeah. So I just want to add, all of that, talking about interacting and socializing, comes from a diehard introvert. I am the very much a poster child of an introvert. I am happy in my own space, and I've had to, again, make it a habit. And as you said, Nick, to be very intentional, but also authentic when you're saying thank you to someone, make that eye contact, those sorts of things. But this has been a growth journey. So all the advice I was talking about comes from someone that would much rather just be alone.
Well, we're glad you're not alone this afternoon here with us. Well, we are coming up on the end of the hour. Thank you so much for coming out with us. Again, It is probably a topic we will pick up again because it is crucial to new grads, to career transition, to just know what the state of the workplace is, and that comes with knowing what the market is, and that comes with knowing the value that we can add as IO psychologists and just general professionals. I do not know what the rest of the year holds. I believe we're taking the next 2 weeks off due to the holidays. We'll be back in 2026 with great content and hopefully great discussion. Again, always encouraged to grab a ticket on the CBOC website and come make your voice heard, answer a question, tell me to shut up, whatever you need to do to get in the room and things like that. Again, if you want some of more guidance, more kind of pre-packaged coaching, a few options with the Career Accelerator course. You can do the full course available on cboc.com, or there is just a workbook that you can kind of take and do more self-directed. We do still have the Pathfinder memberships available. Sign up for that. The mentors are wonderful for you. Thank you all again for being part of this conversation. I hope that the holidays treat you well, and we look forward to seeing you all back in 3 weeks' time with a new year, new goals, and hopefully still going strong and changing the workplace for the better. Counting out in 5, 4, 3, 2, and